You think life today is rough? Trust me, if you were thrown back into the Middle Ages, you wouldn't last a single day. We're spoiled by comfort, safety, and technology. Medieval life? It was a constant battle just to stay alive. And it all begins with something you probably take for granted right now: your next meal. Food from hell. Forget those movies showing knights and kings tearing into turkey legs. For ordinary people, food was miserable, and often deadly. The staple was pottage, a thin, watery stew of vegetables and grains, simmered in the same pot for days. Imagine eating yesterday's soup with bugs and dirt every single night. Bread was tough, heavy, and often full of grit from the grinding stone. People literally chewed on rocks. Worse still, rye bread sometimes grew a fungus called ergot, which caused burning pain, convulsions, and terrifying hallucinations. Entire villages thought they were cursed. Meat was rare and usually spoiled by the time you got it. Spices only covered the stench. And drinking water? Forget it. Streams doubled as sewers. That's why even children drank ale or beer every day. On average, people downed 6 to 8 pints daily. Bathrooms and hygiene. And with all that rotten food and ale, where did it go? Toilets didn't exist. Families used a chamber pot under the bed, dumping it out the window with a warning shout of "Gardy Loo." Castles had garderobes, basically holes in the wall where waste slid down the side of the building. The poor sometimes used open trenches that ran right through town. The workers who cleaned this filth were called gong farmers. They dug through human waste at night, smelled so bad they weren't allowed in churches or taverns, but they earned 4 times more than normal laborers. And no, there was no toilet paper, leaves, moss, or your hand. Work and survival. If you weren't eating or dumping waste, you were working, and not at a cozy desk job. This was backbreaking labor from sunrise to sunset. Peasant farmers plowed heavy soil with wooden tools, planted crops by hand, and harvested using sickles. Harvest season meant 16-hour days and burning 4,000 calories just to keep going. Children started apprenticeships at 7 years old, 6 or 7 days a week, every week, for years, just to move up to a journeyman. Other jobs were brutal: blacksmiths inhaling toxic fumes, tanners soaking hides in urine, or pure finders who collected dog poop to sell. There was no minimum wage, only the minimum needed to avoid starving. Disease and medicine. In the Middle Ages, disease was everywhere, and medicine was little more than guesswork. Life expectancy hovered around 30 to 40 years, and 1 in 3 children never made it past their 5th birthday. People believed illness came from bad air, or an imbalance of the 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. The most common cure was bloodletting, where doctors drained pints of blood until patients collapsed. Leeches were slapped onto skin by the dozens, and mercury was prescribed for fevers and infections, slowly poisoning those desperate for relief. Toothaches were pure agony. With bread filled with stone grit and no dental care, teeth cracked and rotted quickly. When the pain became unbearable, there was only one solution: a brutal extraction. No anesthesia, no numbing, just red-hot irons or rusted pliers tearing the tooth from your skull. And if that didn't kill you, the plagues would. The Black Death alone wiped out half of Europe, leaving bodies stacked in the streets and entire towns abandoned. People thought it was God's punishment or witchcraft, never realizing the true killers were fleas and rats. Even hospitals were death traps. Surgeons operated with filthy tools, bare hands, and no understanding of infection. Overcrowded wards only spread sickness faster, while monks and nuns prayed helplessly over the dying. Hygiene was almost non-existent. Bathing was rare, lice and fleas were everywhere, and garbage rotted in the streets. In a world with no real cures, your doctor wasn't there to heal you. He was there to bleed you, burn you, or bury you. Justice and punishment. Let's say you somehow survived. The legal system might still kill you. Steal a loaf of bread. You could lose your hand. Cut down the wrong tree. Execution. Accused of lying. You'd carry a red-hot iron. If your burns healed in 3 days, you were innocent. Trial by water was worse. If you floated, you were guilty. If you sank, you were innocent, but dead. And torture devices? The rack, thumbscrews, and the Iron Maiden weren't just legends. They were everyday tools of justice. Executions were public entertainment. Families brought snacks to watch. War still alive? Congratulations, you've been drafted. And in the Middle Ages, war wasn't a season, it was a lifetime. Conflicts dragged on for decades. The so-called 100 Years' War didn't last 100. It dragged on for 116. Generations were born and buried under the shadow of endless fighting. Forget shining knights in plate armor. Most soldiers were peasants with nothing but padded rags for protection. Swords and lances were luxuries. The average man fought with farm tools turned into weapons: axes, clubs, sharpened sticks. Marching into battle wasn't glory. It was walking into a butcher's yard, and the butcher's work was swift. At the Battle of Towton in 1461, 28,000 men died in a single day, slain, trampled, or frozen in the snowstorm that raged during the fight. Those who survived often died slowly from infection, their wounds rotting long before they ever saw home again. But the horror didn't end on the battlefield. Armies didn't carry food, they took it. Villages were stripped bare, homes torched, and families left to starve. For civilians, an approaching army wasn't protection. It was the end of everything, everyday misery. And even outside war and plague, life was unbearably bleak. The streets stank of waste, rotting food, and the smoke of endless fires. Butchers dumped blood and entrails into the road, while chamber pots rained filth from windows above. Just walking through town meant breathing in a cocktail of decay. Bathing was rare, maybe once or twice a year if you were lucky. People believed washing too often opened the body to disease, so lice, fleas, and filth became permanent companions. Rats skittered through houses and churches alike, spreading sickness wherever they went. Clothing offered no comfort. Most garments were made of rough, itchy wool, never washed, and worn until they literally fell apart. Owning more than one or two outfits was a luxury reserved for the wealthy. Poor families often crammed into a single room, huddled together for warmth, sometimes even sharing one bed with relatives or strangers at an inn. Privacy simply didn't exist. As for fun, options were grim. People gathered to watch dogs tear apart chained bears or jeer at criminals locked in the stocks. Public executions were treated like festivals. Crowds cheered as men were hanged, burned, or worse. This was entertainment in the Middle Ages: blood, cruelty, and the suffering of others. So the next time you grumble about slow Wi-Fi, a cold shower, or running out of snacks, remember this. In the Middle Ages, you wouldn't be worrying about comfort. You'd be worrying about survival. Disease could kill you overnight. Hunger could gnaw at you for weeks. A war you never asked for could end your life in a single battle. Back then, luxury wasn't streaming movies or ordering takeout. Luxury was living long enough to see another sunrise. So be grateful for your warm bed, your clean water, and your full stomach. Because in the Middle Ages, you'd be lucky to last 24 hours.